As I understand it, stop me when I go wrong, he was visited in the night by an angel called Moroni, who showed him where he could locate some golden plates near his home. His mysterious translation of those plates form the basis of this.
Wow! No, you read more than we do. No, seriously, we should be more like you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed.
Pie smells amazing.
And now that you've been studying the Book of Mormon, how does it make you feel?
Can you guess what kind of pie she's making?
Is it blueberry pie?
It is blueberry pie.
I knew it, my favorite.
Going back, can I ask, how did your father pass away?
But this is their entry into elevated horror. And, it comes with all the trappings. A24 is giving it to us. They have their really semi-deceptive ad campaign that we, all kind of expect at this point. And, going into it, my question was, what is the advertising going to mislead me on with this? You have Hugh Grant being some kind of weird, it's unclear whether he's just like a serial killer or if there's something supernatural going on here. And as these two LDS missionaries descend into the hell he's creating for them, what is the point of this gonna be? And unfortunately, for my enjoyment, don't touch that, honey, that's a piece of glass. That's a piece of glass. Sorry, but but the because as it goes along, it teases you into believing a lot of different things. There's a lot of red herrings in here narratively, and I felt very unsatisfied by the end with its ambiguity, and it just left me kind of wanting. I wished it would have committed to one of the directions it takes you on, and ultimately, yeah, you can understand, at least I could understand why it does what it does. It needed to make its point, but it doesn't have a point to make that Mike Flanagan hasn't already beaten them to the punch on.
Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, and this is episode 56. Did anybody tell Scott Beck and Brian Woods that Halloween is over? Apparently not, because it's the second week of November, and we have been gifted this twisted little religious horror film from the directing duo. Today's featured review is going to be covering Heretic. The question on my mind is, does Heretic have insightful religious commentary that'll have you questioning your faith? Or is it nothing more than baby's first Richard Dawkins novel? We will get to that a bit later. First up, though, we're covering a bit of movie news. We've got the Watchlist, which is very, very topical this week, and we're going to bring it all home with the Mentionables. Please do please do subscribe if you like what we're doing here on the channel. And if you're listening to us as a podcast, consider rating us on the service of your choice. But that is enough from me. Chuck, anything you wanted to cover before we got into the meat of it?
Just that the minisode I teased is going to be coming to you a little later than usual. The events of this past week really ate up a lot of my energy and time. But never fear, you'll be getting a 30-minute long video from me. The first recording I did for it was almost an hour long, and I was like, oh shit, no one's got time for this. So we'll do what I can to keep it at a reasonable length. The algorithm seems to like that more anyway. And speaking, I guess, of a time before everything was algorithmically driven, and the Weinstein brothers decided the fate of everything that made it onto theater screens, we have some good news coming from the realm of horror parody, because the Wayans brothers apparently are back in the saddle and back in control of the franchise that they created in Scary Movie. How did this come about, Matt? And what can we expect from it?
Yeah, so a new Scary Movie film is in the works, and the Wayans brothers, they initially announced this, I think it was at CinemaCon in 2022, but now, like, things are official now. They got the green light, they have the script, and this trio, I believe it's Marlon, Sean, and Keenan Ivory Wayans, were sort of the writing, producing, and in Marlon and Sean's case, the acting trio that was responsible for the first two films in the Scary Movie series. And not much else is known at this point, other than that the movie will be theatrically released and it will be coming from Miramax, sans, Harvey Weinstein.
And more
But
specifically, Bob, because this was on the Dimension label.
That's right. Yeah, it was. And so, yeah, it's really interesting to me because, unfortunately, the Scary Movie franchise continued beyond the first two. Eventually, it sort of fizzled out both commercially and critically, and it led to this awful resurgence in the parody genre with movies like Epic Movie and Date Movie and Meet the Spartans, just all this trash. And now we've sort of gotten enough distance from those things that I think there's something novel to this concept again, especially with the way in which the horror genre has evolved in the last 10, 12 years since the last Scary Movie 5, I think, was the last one. And they're bringing back, the Wayans brothers. And so I don't know what my question is sort of, what do you think this movie needs to be successful? What does it need to do? What does in the year 2024, how does a movie like this succeed?
Be as edgy as possible. It really does need to, because the last one I saw was 3, where they were making fun of like non-horror films a bit more than horror films. Like, because in that one, it was a big Signs parody, with a little bit of 8 Mile thrown in there for some reason. And it just was ridiculous and just like, and not in a good way. I was like 13 when it came out, and I even was like where's the bite? This just feels lame. This is like baby's first Scary Movie, sequel, basically, is what it felt like. And if they're going to be doing this today, it needs to like really be transgressive, but still be lighthearted about it. Which is like, I recently, saw a clip from the first Scary Movie where like she's being chased up the stairs and she's just like throwing like an old lady at Ghostface and a piano, and it just keeps escalating and escalating and just, and that's what it needs. It just needs that Looney Tunes kind of possibility, that no matter what is going on, something completely nuts, could transpire within a moment's notice. Like that's really what made it work. But then again, like when you look at like what horror is like these days, it's a lot like, at the time it definitely was the B tier of entertainment. People didn't really look at horror with their nose in the air like we do these days. And like do they run the risk of it, I guess, because like and what made it work is that the movies they were making fun of were movies that people had all seen, and like had the point of reference for. So can they really go after obscure horror? Like, cause like that, I'm sorry, that's what elevated horror is. It's only the snobs that are watching that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, we've become way less of a monoculture. People have their own things that they like, and they're kind of in those subgenres, and it'll be tough because they do need to adhere to, at least things that most people have seen. And I think the way in which they can do that is, the first movie, Scary Movie 1, was all about a parodying Scream. That was like the basis for the plot. the entire thing was a Scream parody. And it's funny because in the year 2024, the Scream series is also still alive and well.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
so let's do what the Scream series has done and what a lot of horror series have done. And let's do Scary Movie as a Lega sequel where let's bring back Anna Faris, let's bring back Regina Hall, Shannon Elizabeth, all the actors from the first one, and let's pair them up with a bunch of Gen Zers, and then let's parody the phenomenon of the Lega sequel, because all the horror, big horror movies are doing it these days, like the Scream series. The Last Exorcist was a Lega sequel. The Last Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a Lega sequel. They're all doing it. And so let's do
Halloween,
that.
Halloween,
Halloween,
yeah.
yes. Yeah. So let's do that, and that'll kind of form the basis. And then, I don't know, they can get a little more granular with the sort of individual jokes in the movie. Let's parody A24 horror. Let's parody found footage. Do jokes about streaming services. Do jokes about sort of the self-seriousness of Jordan Peele and Ari Aster. I want to see it all.
Because that's the thing. Like it's fertile ground. There's lots of things to play with, and they might as well try and make a proper trilogy out of it. Just to really make the Lega sequel thing complete.
Yeah, and you're completely right about being as edgy as possible, because I think people are looking for that. I think they should take sort of the South Park approach to comedy, where they skewer all sides. Sort of make fun of the dumbest among us, whether or not they are, a liberal, a conservative, a whatever.
Yeah.
Let's just make fun of everybody. And I think they would be right to do that. And I think they're making the right decision to put it in theaters, because people want to experience a pure comedy like this in a theater, laughing with your friends, laughing with a bunch of strangers. We don't get like pure comedy movies anymore that aren't just dumped on streaming services. It's always like dumb, like genre fusion, like dramedies or romantic comedies, or a lot of comedy movies nowadays have like just the most awful self-important messaging. Like I'm taking my friend to on a road trip to get an abortion, but along the way we're going to get into a bunch of wacky hijinks, and then in the last 10 minutes of the movie we're going to turn into a self-serious drama. And I'm just so sick of that. I want to see a pure comedy. I want to see this in theaters with a bunch of people. It just doesn't happen much anymore.
Definitely. Yeah, I had a thought, and then it went out of my head, instantly. But yeah, like, oh well, in terms of going after everybody, these guys safely could do that. Being like a trio of African American creators, they can take the piss out of Jordan Peele. Because there was that like big list of like top horror films. I forget who put that out there somewhat recently, like within the last month, like when that list, I think either it came from IMDb or some other place, but the top horror films of all time included things that were not horror. Like The Blackening was on there, which is that horror film about black people's experiences in horror films. And I'm just like, so the point is being missed here. You know what I mean? But go after all of that, especially go after Ari Aster. If we don't have like a Midsummer like spoof at some point in it, just for like a bit, it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I can't wait. We're apparently going to see this next year, as soon as next year. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Do you think Art the Clown will have a cameo?
That would be awesome. Yeah, because he could totally make the jump. I didn't even think about that, but Yeah, that would be amazing. I don't know. I guess Damien Leon is very protective over his IP. But I don't know, that could make for something really interesting.
Damien, be open to it. Let your boy get the mainstream, the true mainstream exposure that he needs. Moving on to the watch list, though. Forgive me, if you're still smarting from the results of, election day. But this movie came out long before Election Day. In fact, Donald Trump tried to stop this movie from coming out. And for good reason. It's no holds barred, warts and all. The Apprentice is basically the Donald Trump origin story that probably skews more to reality than his supporters would like to believe. However, this movie does a great deal to humanize the guy in a way that his detractors would not be able to rationalize. But it's got this great cast. Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn is just, mwah, give this man the Oscar he deserves. He's killing it throughout the movie. And what's the actor playing Trump? I can't think of his name right now.
Oh, Sebastian
Stan.
Yeah.
He is immaculate. He does such a good job. It never veers into like SNL parody, of him or his mannerisms. He just does such a good job of just getting the weird little facial tics right. Like when Trump isn't talking is when the performance feels the most real. When he's just like sitting and listening or chewing on cheese balls, it's very cool because like the whole premise of the movie is it's Trump before he's Trump, and it's how he becomes the celebrity icon that he was during the 80s. But it's how did he get there? He got there because Roy Cohn was able to help him and his family get out of a civil rights lawsuit because they were like denying African Americans, the right to lease on their properties, allegedly. And if you believe what this movie says and what is very likely true based on what we know about Roy Cohn historically, it probably involved blackmail because he threw a bunga bunga party that some district attorney, was at, and he was recorded in, a compromising position because that's how Roy Cohn operated. He very much was like a J. Edgar Hoover type where it's like you just get dirt on anyone and then you can get anyone to do what you need them to do to a varying degree, either outright or just enough that you can call it a win. Because that's like the three rules of Roy Cohn are absolutely like the three rules that the real life guy operates on. It's like never admit defeat, never admit you're wrong, and just, go for the jugular, whenever you can. And it's such a fun film. Like it's Ali Abbas is the director.
Ali Abbasi.
The Holy Spider director. And the jump from that to this, holy cow. Just in terms of like being able to go from, a foreign film, that, like much like a Holy Spider, it's like, it's probably taking a lot of truth and then crafting a good movie experience out of it at the same time without feeling too beholden one way or the other. It has a lot of vibes with Wolf of Wall Street without like all the maximalism. It's very grounded. The cinematography is mostly handheld. You're just in the room, instead of like having like big camera sweeps, and a lot of the work that they did to make grimy, gross New York, you feel very real. Like it was very effective, and yeah, it's worth seeing. It's probably going to be, in my, tops of the year list. And both of these gentlemen deserve Oscars, in my opinion. And so does, is it Maria Balakova? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep.
Playing Ivana. She does a really good job too. And she, gets put through a lot in this movie, for her limited screen time. See this film, because gear up. We have another 4 years with this guy in the Oval Office.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm you said they deserve Oscars, and I've heard a lot of that talk, especially Jeremy Strong should be nominated, but I'm kind of curious, like, this movie has, despite the fact that it was released when it was because they thought it would have some sort of effect on the results of the presidential election, which it really didn't. It had really no effect. And it's, beyond that, they should be nominated for Oscars, but I don't think they're going to be because of the results. And I don't know, do you agree with that? As far as like, would this movie have had a better chance at Oscar nominations and other award nominations had
he lost?
Trump not won? Like, is it too real now is basically what I'm asking, and nobody wants to think about this movie anymore.
Well, and that's the annoying thing. I think his supporters should watch it to get whatever they can out of it. Whether it makes them view him differently or if it validates their feelings for him. Because there's definitely people who would watch this and be like, yeah, I knew that he was this guy. That's why I voted for him. You know what I mean? There's definitely that attitude, amongst his supporters. But in general, if you are, like a mega type, you like looked at the trailer for this movie or read some think piece about it and just probably said, oh, they're being so unfair. They're making movies about him so he can't get elected. And it's like, no, they're making a movie about him because he's just such a fascinating and like, we can't get rid of him. He is a part of the cultural fabric, and it's behooved upon us to understand why that is and maybe get a sense for how this happened. And no, but as far as, whether it would damage their chances one way or the other, I honestly think that it maybe like the outcome would actually, like, I think that it could get like a Hollywood protest thing to have them be nominated and to have this movie be front and center. But at the same time, when you look at the media landscape, there is almost like they're exhausted. They are even more like they're reaching the exhaustion level of the audience with the discourse around this guy. And maybe you're right. It's like if kind of like with the Blast Borat movie, which gave itself a lot of backpats, for contributing to his downfall in 2020. You could almost say that they're just gonna be, well, this movie failed. Why would we reward it? But at the same time, I think they should still reward the artists and the actors involved in this, because they made a really entertaining film. And and one that I watched all the way through without stopping. The when he gets to Donald Trump on like amphetamine diet pills level, it just goes to another level. And I got a lot out of this, and I think more people should just like take themselves out of the present and just go back to the dirty 80s. And, just get a sense for who this guy is, in terms of how this film portrays him, because I think it's pretty authentic. And a lot of people don't know about Roy Cohn unless they've, seen Angels in America, because he has a figure in American history. And that's what Jeremy Strong embodies. They show a shot of it in the trailer, but like the first time he's introduced in the movie, Trump is just at this club having a really bad date with a girl, and she's not really into him because he's just a nobody at this point, but he's acting like a big shot, and he just like sees Roy Cohn come in with his coterie of minions, and they go and sit down at their table. Yeah, it's right there, and they catch each other's eye, and there's just this menace and this sinister air that just comes and radiates out of him, and like the shot holds for an uncomfortably long time. And like he was a closeted gay Republican who died of AIDS for crying out loud, or HIV, and the way that he would like he would just get really touchy feely and and just weirdly sexual with Trump in ways that like are hard to fathom that the man would tolerate it, but it feels true to him being a desperate climber, because that's who he is at the beginning of the movie. But yeah,
I'm really want to see it. Really looking forward to watching this one. And it's we'll see. I mean, Oscar noms should be coming out soon, and we will see. I hope it does get awarded, because I really like the Ali Abbasi. I really like the stuff he does. His career trajectory has been really fascinating with Holy Spider and this, and then doing like a bunch of Last of Us episodes.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I want nothing but success for him. Yeah.
Exactly. Next up on the watch list here, another movie that I've been viewing with a great deal of attention just because of who's involved in it. What does Anora do to the career trajectory of Sean Baker?
Well, yeah. Speaking of calls for Oscar nominations, this is sort of the movie of the now, right now. Anora from Sean Baker. I think that I'm not going as gaga over this one as everybody else seems to be. I still liked it, but the trailer for this would have you believe it's some sort of like Romeo and Juliet story between a Long Island stripper and then the son of a Russian oligarch. And that's what it sort of is for like the first 30 minutes. Like it's just kind of this whirlwind romance, or whatever a whirlwind romance looks like in the year 2024. That is completely predicated on a transactional relationship. There's a lot of partying and doing drugs and a lot of banging and walking the Coney Island boardwalk and shopping at high-end fashion stores. And then eventually this stripper and this son of the Russian oligarch, they go to Vegas and they spontaneously get married. And of course, the father of the ultra-rich Russian oligarch father, he can't have this. He needs to get this marriage annulled because this, dirty stripper is going after his family's money. So he sends his like Russian bodyguard lackeys to go get the marriage annulled. And it's so weird because this is where the movie, it really takes like an unexpected swerve into like slapsticky, like pratfall comedy. And these Russian goons are basically chasing our lovebirds all over New York City. And I don't know, this is where like the movie kind of got run into the ground for me, where scenes go on for way too long and they're doing like these comedy routines that are just like run into the ground. And it's like, what are we doing here? What is this movie? And you're never really like endeared to either one of the main characters, Anora or Ivan, the son of the Russian oligarch, because they are incredibly superficial people, and the film never gives any sort of backstory to either one of them. Like, so it's like, do I care that they end up together? Not really. Do I care that Anora, gets all of her dreams fulfilled and becomes a trophy wife and gets all the wealth that her heart desires? Not really. At most I feel bad for her, but I don't really like her because at the end of the day, this movie's sort of underlying message is about how the ultra rich basically live in a different world than the rest of us, and they can pay their way out of any situation. They can stomp all over us as much as they want, and that's kind of the underlying message to this. And so it was fine, I guess, at the end of the day. Worth seeing, definitely, especially because this will be in the awards conversation, early next year. But yeah, it was fine. And I wanted to kind of transition to my other movie here because something happens at the end of this movie where it becomes more interesting in literally the last 30 seconds of the movie, and that is also something that happens in my other watch list entry this week, which is the 2006 movie The Lives of Others. And this is a movie that I'm not going to say much on here about it, because I just think you should go watch it, because it's an incredible, incredible film. And I wanted to just see if, I last saw this almost 20 years ago in 2006, and it was sort of critically heralded at the time. And I just wanted to see if, it still held up. And it does. It's one of like the best movies ever. And like Anora, this is a movie that gets significantly better in like its last 30 seconds. But in the case of this movie, in the case of The Lives of Others, it's sort of the last 30 seconds of the movie solidifies its status as one of the best movies ever. But in Anora's, in the sense of Anora, the last 30 seconds just leave you wanting more, because it's like, it literally becomes way more interesting, and then it ends, and it's like, oh my God, why can't we get more of that? Why did it have to end there? And it's sort of I don't know. I find the dichotomy between these two films fascinating, because they both, despite the fact that they have nothing to do with each other in any respect, this is kind of the commonality that binds them together for me this week. And so, yeah, do go see The Lives of Others if you've never seen it for some reason. Unfortunately, it's a movie that has never been on a streaming service ever. And so in order to watch it, you either have to rent it or, watch it by some other nefarious means. But yeah, do go watch that, and maybe go see Anora. But I think you're fine waiting, honestly, in my opinion. But yeah,
I was trying to I was trying to figure out ahead of time, like, what compelled you to watch this, because like it's a great movie. It won Best Foreign Film Oscar. It's highly acclaimed. I personally hold it in high esteem as well, because it kind of tied into the whole surveillance blackmail aspect to The Apprentice to a degree, because there's a lot of that going on. The difference being in one, you're going to one of Roy Cohn's bunga bunga parties, in his Manhattan townhouse, and you expect that all your secrets are going to be kept. And in the other, it's just living with the knowledge that at any day you could just go to work and come home, and the Stasis have completely infiltrated every aspect of your life. And but I'm trying to remember what the last 30 seconds are.
I'll spoil it here. I mean, just be wary of anybody who's listening or watching. Be wary. I'm about to spoil the literal ending. So at the very, very end, the Stasi officer, the main guy, it's after the fall of the Berlin Wall.
That's right.
And he goes into a bookstore, and he sees the book that the playwright guy basically dedicated to him. He opens it up, and it's dedicated to him. And he goes up to the bookseller and puts the book on the counter, and the bookseller goes like, "Oh, is this like like good book? Is this a gift, or do you want me to gift wrap this for you?" And he says, "No, it's for me."
That's right.
And that's like, it just solidifies. It's like the perfect ending. And because of course, because it's a double entendre, of course the book was written for him, and it's for him because he's gonna read it. But yeah, it's fascinating, amazing. And so yeah, I love this movie, and it totally holds up, now almost 20 years later.
Brief bit of trivia about this movie that kind of makes it very sad, even more sadder than it kind of is. But the actor who plays the Stasi agent, while they were making it, he was given access to his file, and he found out that his
jeez.
wife, of many decades, had been informing on him, before the
Oh,
fall
wow.
of and it like ruined his life. And or like he just fell into a great sadness because of it. And that's a like but that's the reality that this film explores. You really should see it. I'm still interested in Anora. The fact that the Sean Baker could go from making films about you know transgender hookers, to all the subsequent films that have followed. He is just fascinating, and I just hope he
Yes.
doesn't. Yeah, I just hope that no one in Hollywood really gets their fingers in him, and we see him making like a Disney movie someday, because that's just that's the end of the line, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Moving on to the main event here. Um, the subject matter of this quote unquote horror film, is something that my father and I have kind of been exploring, back and forth. Not specifically this movie, but he has been working on his great American novel, which is following a rural North Dakota sheriff, discovering that there's been this serial killer who has been killing people, out of his abundant, appreciation and belief in nihilism. And he's killing people to make people lose their faith, essentially. And as I was watching this, I was like, oh, geez, Dave would like this, just because it's fertile ground for thinking. I don't know necessarily that he will appreciate the film's conclusions, but this is, to me, a vehicle for ideas in a way that most horror films aren't. Heretic, coming to us from the Iowan duo Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who people are maybe familiar with their work more so than them as creators, because they co-wrote and created the story for A Quiet Place, and of course apparently we're behind the dinosaur gun movie 65 that I think no one saw. But this is their entry into elevated horror. And, it comes with all the trappings. A24 is giving it to us. They have their really semi-deceptive ad campaign that we, all kind of expect at this point. And, going into it, my question was, what is the advertising going to mislead me on with this? You have Hugh Grant being some kind of weird, like, it's unclear whether he's just like a serial killer or if there's something supernatural going on here. And as these two LDS missionaries descend into the hell he's creating for them, like what is the point of this gonna be? And unfortunately, for my enjoyment, no, don't touch that, honey, that's a piece of glass. That's a piece of glass.
Oh, boy.
Sorry, but
That's right.
but the because like as it goes along, it teases you into believing a lot of different things. There's a lot of red herrings in here narratively, and I felt very unsatisfied by the end with its ambiguity, and it just left me kind of wanting. I wished it would have committed to one of the directions it takes you on, and ultimately, yeah, you can understand, at least like I could understand why it does what it does. It needed to make its point, but it doesn't have a point to make that Mike Flanagan hasn't already beaten them to the punch on. As far, the religion bad, but faith can still be good thing too. Like it's trite in its messaging, but it still gets you thinking, which is more than most elevated horror films tend to do. But it's not really horror in my mind, and like I don't know, like I don't know if it's a matter of execution. of its plot or what, because otherwise everything else it has working from, technically, the cinematography especially is effective. It's absolutely effective, and it does get you locked in. But I was like kind of getting antsy in my seat waiting for it to wind up at least at one of the places it seemed to be promising to go. What did you think?
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of a hard movie to judge for me because, as you sort of stated, there are some things that I loved, like the cinematography and like Hugh Grant's performance. And then there's some things that I thought were just absolutely corny, like the script. And then some things that I think are outright bad, like the final 15 minutes. And so
Yeah.
I kind of chalk this up as like an entertaining write down. I don't think Scott Beck and Brian Woods are anything but idea men. Like they're really just not well-rounded creatives that they shouldn't be handling. They're not like these multifaceted guys that should be handling writing and directing and producing all on the same movie. And I think that their wildly inconsistent filmography is kind of a testament to that fact. I think if we have to start anywhere, I think it's with Hugh Grant's portrayal of Mr. Reed, because while Hugh Grant is great in this movie, he is amazing on like a acting level. I think in order for that character to work, you have to be able to accomplish two things. You have to, make their points make sense. Their logic needs to make sense, or you have to at least be able to understand it as an audience. And Mr. Reed is so full of shit. He is constantly contradicting himself. He's constantly like breaking his own rules. He's a massive hypocrite. So, after a point, I was just like you said, I was getting bored of his messy logic. I was sitting there in the theater, like, oh my God, can we like move on? Because it's so messy. And then on top of that, the second point is, instead of writing good like dialogue, like clever dialogue, the script is like constantly shortcutting the points that the writers want to make by using like references to real life. And this happens so often in this movie. It's so it becomes so cheap, and it's like I lost count of the number of times that a character in this movie says, "Have you ever heard of blank?" And it's like constant. It's like, have you ever heard of the Landlord's Game? Have you ever heard of Creep by Radiohead? Have you ever heard of the Great Prayer Experiment? Have you ever heard of the Butterfly Dream? And it's like constantly just like referencing real life stuff to make the points that it wants to make. And it comes off as so cheap, and it comes off as just them shortcutting the path to the points that they want to make. And I hated it. Anytime a character was like, ever heard of Monopoly? It was just like, oh my God, shut the fuck up.
Like,
and so like,
at its best, it was like a bad Tarantino movie, but then eventually it's just this. It's worse than a crutch. It's like it's their laziness kind of creeping in. It's like we know what we want to accomplish, but we're not going to put in the work to like do it elegantly. Like I will admit, like, and you included it, but that whole conversation at the beginning about Magnum condoms and like porn, was, like it was memorable, and it does kind of give us a hint as to the nature of the two missionaries played by Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, because you get the sense that I believe it's Paxton, right? Like she's the final girl.
Yep.
Yeah, you get the sense that she may be practicing what she's preaching, but you get the sense that she has a part, like there's a part of her that doesn't quite buy it, or that she still has she is still like a part of the world that she is implicitly rejecting by joining the church. And so like in that respect, character's pretty well rounded. It manifests, as they're forced to make their choices, as the movie goes on to a degree. But yeah, like other than that, you're right. It's go grab. Oh, here's a piece of paper. Go to
Yeah,
the
well, you get
table,
the
okay?
sense that both of these
Need you to be
characters,
quiet.
Sister Paxton and the other one played by Sophie Thatcher, they're both kind of not as I guess adhering to the Mormon doctrine as you would think, but Sophie Thatcher's character in a more overt way. She is more overtly worldly, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Chloe East's character, it's kind of hidden a bit. It's sort of like she almost puts on this veil of innocence, because as the movie goes on, the veil sort of drops, and you get the sense that she is more observant than she is letting on, and she's able to sort of, I guess, debate
Forgot to
these
update the
things
text
more.
on that slide. I'm just not realizing it. Shit.
Oh. But yeah, she's able to, kind of keep up with Hugh Grant's character more than she initially lets on. She's not as innocent as she, would lead you to believe at the beginning of the movie. And so yeah, I mean, I did like the characters. I mean, the acting job of all three of the sort of, I guess, co-leads of this movie were really great. I mean, they were all really, really great, especially Hugh Grant. I just love his like facial expressions and just his little his ticks, his facial ticks, his sort of just weird, like I love the fact that they didn't even explain why this British guy is in like the Pacific Northwest. He's just British, and he's just being Hugh Grant, and they never really explain it. And he has kind of all of the Hugh Grant mannerisms that we've come to expect from the actor.
But this is just a nitpick, and might just be something I'm sick of. I am tired, and of this trope where people are just able to have these subterranean death traps beneath their homes. Like I guess maybe I might be overblowing it, but it's come up in like, God, what was
Barbarian?
that? Barbarian specifically. But yeah, it beggars belief. Like the contractors aren't asking any questions. Like you're doing all this work yourself.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it is kind of weird. It's definitely a subject that I'm also divided on, because it's like, on one hand, it is completely beyond belief, but then on the other hand, it is kind of an interesting concept of these sort of playing with the idea that you never know who your neighbors are, or your neighbors could literally be like psycho people who have like subterranean dungeons, like multi sub basements on sub basements. It's an idea that should be explored a little more thoughtfully, probably. Yeah,
because it's just they just come up with the idea, and then that's the last thought that's kind of put into it. And but yeah, that's my admittedly very nitpicky beef, just right out the gate, is as far as the subject of this movie. But yeah, like, I guess maybe we should just get into the nitty gritty here, because with everything that it teases you with about it, like there is some kind of other dark force at play. Like there is no God here, but there's something else here. It all just ends up being a trick so that he can get one over on the silly believers, ultimately. And in the overarching point of that, like of his whole little exercise and all the women he's keeping in cages in his mega basement, is simply just that religion's about control. Okay, cool. Yeah, we all know about Jonestown. Like and I guess, and that's ultimately why I felt so whelmed by it all. It's like, I'm like, you really put me through all this just to make that point? Oh, all right, guys, I suppose. But like, was there something to the experience that I maybe wasn't appreciating? Because let me fucking tell you, the amount of video essays and analysis videos about this movie are fucking staggering. And the amount of like in-depth like thought being put into all the minutia of this movie. Like, are people giving it way too much credit, or am I not giving it enough?
I don't think so. I think you're right on the money. I think this is at its core, this is a very base movie, and it really doesn't deserve like a ton of essays. It really doesn't deserve anything more than like the 30-minute conversation that we're going to give it here today, because the fact of the matter is I'm really disappointed with this movie as far as what could have been, as you are, where it would have been so much cooler if Mr. Reed, if there was a supernatural element to it, if Mr. Reed had like an old god chained up in his basement that he was some sort of acolyte for, or he had some sort of proof of the supernatural in his basement. Like he actually believed that he had seen some sort of miracle at one point in his life, and he was constantly trying to replicate that miracle. Or, you already brought up the house. And, why is his house like the way it is? Why is it constructed like a weird like maze with sub-basements on sub-basements? And a good explanation for that could have been, what if Mr. Reed has a like eldritch god that he has trapped in his basement somehow, and his basement is structured the way in which it is because it's like some sort of minotaur's labyrinth for this supernatural thing that he has trapped in there. And that could have been the explanation, but none of this is true. It's all bullshit. And the supernatural route should have been the route that they should have gone. I sort of understand why they went the way they did, because in order for this movie to make the point that it's trying to make, Reed has to be a fraud. He has to be a bullshitter. But it's sort of setting the movie up for failure, because with the expectations that the first 2 acts of this movie set up, it makes it anticlimactic, and so it's sort of a bit of a catch-22, I guess. And then in the end, of course, it devolves into a murderous man chasing young women, which is something we have seen many, many times before. And so, I do think that this says something about like modern tastes as far as horror movies go, where you compare this to something like Longlegs. And I think as, a culture, as a audience, as the general public would rather have something like Longlegs, because it's something that we haven't seen before, even if it doesn't make like 100% sense or narrative sense. It requires you to do a little bit more of, the connecting the dots than something like this does.
Yeah, and it just calls to mind like why I think Hereditary was so successful in what it did, because it was utterly committed to its direction. Yeah, it gives you the possibility that all this could just be her own grief and mania, that's causing all this weirdness to be happening, but in that movie, but like the payoff at the end of that is still just so resonant and incredible and memorable. And instead, the emotions I'm left with from Heretic is just like, really? Come on. Like, you no balls, like this is poverty, sort of, like the being so non-committal, just for the sake of misdirection. And it's and I like your idea about the labyrinth, because otherwise what's the point of it? You know, like he's already, you know, tormenting these people enough, you know, and like how many like random like Jehovah's Witnesses that he has in his basement. And it's just like I guess this is, if this movie does nothing else, maybe it will, you know, keep the resident Mormons in Minot from, you know, knocking on our door, you know, anymore. When I first moved to Minot, like we had this crazy ass blizzard, and literally the night of this crazy ass blizzard, the missionaries were out knocking on doors, and I'm like, you guys are psycho. You should not be out there right now.
Yeah,
but that's
the same thing. The same thing happens. The literal same thing happens in this movie.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, and that's where like I laughed because I was like, "Yep, this is on brand. This feels right." And yeah, there's so much untapped possibility that I think it's strange that when you're being given the license and the cachet of a A24, you know, horror film, that you're not just going to go balls to the wall. Yeah, it just it felt so safe ultimately. And it would like in the promise of everything that's in there, you know, like you almost wish that they could pull, like, I can't think of a filmmaker who's done it, who's just been like, they've put a movie out and then they're like, no, I'm going to do this again, but better, like Evil Dead 2, maybe. I don't know. You know, like just,
sure.
Yeah, just being like, we're going to have another run at this. Let's get the crew back together. But you can't do that. This is the movie they made. That's just how it is.
Yeah. And speaking of safeness, the ending, so this is sort of how I read into it. I mean, basically, I don't know if you're actually paying attention to what's going on. I don't really know how you can read into it in any other way. But Sister Paxton, she's dead and she's still in the basement, right? Like she dies of blood loss in the basement because, I mean, there are multiple things that point to this, you know, such as the conversations about your brain hallucinating while your body is in the act of dying. And then the fact that she throws her phone outside and it still says no service at the very end. And the camera very, very clearly shows this fact. And so, yeah, she's dead, right?
Absolutely. That's the one thing they signposted that actually arrived at the destination. And, you know, and I guess it kind of, you know, it makes sense, I suppose, you know, that like that's what the conclusion would be, because, you know, the too many inexplicable things occur, you know, from a certain point until the end. It's like it's almost too happy of an ending. And I guess that's the overarching point. You know, it's like none of us know what comes after we die, but we all have to cling to something. You know, like something, some thought gives us comfort, whether it's a thought of an afterlife or just the sweet release of nothingness. You know, like we all have something in our belief system that gives us, you know, comfort with our mortality. And, you know, and that's what people are all, you know, searching for, you know, like whether, I know a lot of people seek out faith and religion because they want purpose in the life that they have. But for a lot of other people, their primary concern is what happens after I die. And, you know, and that's where, like, I think it was funny that you have this Mormon missionary talking about reincarnating as a butterfly, you know, but like the more I sat with it, I'm like, no, like that's just like her kind of clinging to, you know, something that, you know, made her, you know, more okay with it, you know, ultimately. And yeah, we'll just, and I don't know, like, yeah, because like how else could this movie have ended? You know, like as soon as like all the cat was out of the bag and you just have a final girl being chased by a you know, a murderous man, there's only so many ways it can go. And they
yeah,
I guess, you know, kept it true to its themes by going in that direction.
Yeah. One thing that I did want to be sure to touch on before we got off this was, if you're paying any attention to the sort of the story off the screen with this movie. One of the things that has been talked about is this movie, during its end credits, it has a message, a statement that comes up that says, "No generative AI was used in the making of this film." And I find this very funny, or I find this interesting because since that fact became known, this movie has kind of become the unlikely flag bearer for this sort of larger AI and film conversation where Scott Beck and Brian Woods, they're out there on doing the marketing tour for this, and they're talking about that. They're talking about that fact. And a lot of it has to do with them actually like preemptively trying to squash the idea that they used AI for this movie, which I don't really, after seeing the movie, I don't really understand what they're referring to, but it's also just kind of they have a larger message that they're trying to send where they don't want to see AI being used in movies. And so, yeah, what do you think of all that? What do you think of that sort of conversation?
I almost feel like you should only have to put a disclaimer related to AI in your movie if you have used it. Honestly, like I think it's just such a virtue signal. Like I understand, I get it, guys. Like people will just accuse you of it, and then you have to spend a lot of time and energy disputing or debunking that allegation. But I don't see where it could have manifested in this movie. Like earlier this year with Late Nights with the Devil, or like I think like that one. They got outed for, I guess, using some AI generated elements in their title cards. And it's like, and in that instance, I'm just like, well, who gives a shit? But I guess it did wind up on screen. But if you're just using like AI to do like pre-production, design concept work, who cares? Like, in my opinion, like I know you'd like, not everybody can afford to have like with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, how they had like Alan Howe and all those other guys just sitting there doing concept art for the movie. You know what I mean? Like not everybody can have that. And like, I don't know. I want to see a movie be proud of its use of AI, especially if it like, I don't know, like the idea that you're just like talking to a box and then you're getting something out of it. That, like, I almost think that like if a movie is exploring the themes related to artificial intelligence, they should make artificial intelligent generated imagery a part of the experience. Like there's even that, like there's some like gonzo project where like maybe I'm conflating it, but or maybe it's a conceptual thing where there's going to be an AI generated like movie where the visuals during certain portions are unique to each screening of it. Ooh. Like that's something that is pretty bizarre, but yeah, like I want to see some movie be like, yeah, we used AI in our movie. Yeah, go ahead. Don't buy our tickets. We don't give a shit. Yeah. We're just letting you know up front that we're doing that. Like they should put it in the trailers, just so like they could just get it over with. But
well, I mean, I think that the usage of AI is, I think, inevitable from a studio perspective because they see the dollar signs, they see all the money that it's going to save them, and stuff like that. And so I think that AI being used in the making of movies is just an inevitability. But one thing I do see maybe cropping up is in the future, as AI is used more and more, we're going to see like almost like I don't know how I should term this, but I guess like the hipsters kind of come out of the woodwork, and there's going to be certain people out there who are going to take sort of indie film one step further, where they're going to be like, people want to see, like homespun entertainment. So they will put these, notices on their movies where, we did not use AI. They will, as sort of like a badge of honor or a badge of their credibility. It's going to be almost something like where, some movies have the message at the end no animals were harmed in the making of this movie.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a badge of honor, sort of like that. And I don't know if it's ever going to be something that will legally be required where they must disclose, but I think that there are going to be certain directors and producers who are going to want to spin that idea to their benefit.
Oh yeah, like on my late minisode, the people who made Northern Lights deliberately shot in black and white 16 millimeter because they wanted to feel pure and not Hollywood. And it's, you can serve a project very well to make a choice like that. And that's definitely going to be the case where, like with all things, in the AI era, it gives an artist a little bit of, more credibility to virtue signal that and be like, only human beings touched this. And people will be like, oh yeah, I'll buy that. Oh, it's bespoke film. Ooh, even though it's like what before AI, that's what a typical movie was. But God, like, we are in a Brave New World territory as far as that's concerned. Have you seen the technology they're putting out there now where they can, instead of like emulating a game, like just playing a game on a computer or emulating a console, through a very precise, emulator, they are training AIs now to completely just play a game without actually having its engine or like any of the moving parts of a game as we know it. It just has so many iterations of learning, of watching people play it. So it can build Dust 2 in Counter-Strike, or like the first level of Doom, and you can play Doom. And just based on what it expects it to be there and based on your commands, it just builds it on the fly. So instead of having, and that, once that merges with film, we're all fucked. It's all over.
Yeah, it's all over. Yeah. No, I haven't seen that, but yeah, that's fascinating. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see where all this goes. But yeah, I guess, final words on Heretic. I don't know. I guess I don't know if I'd necessarily endorse this as a theatrical experience. I don't think I necessarily. I don't know if I got anything in particular out of it because I saw it in a theater. So yeah, this is one that I would probably tell you to wait for streaming for. This is an A24 movie, and so if people will remember, A24 struck a deal with HBO last year, and so expect this to be on HBO in about 2 months.
And frankly, it should have been on HBO to begin with. Like it never it has the same like quality as a straight to streaming horror movie. Like, this is the kind of stuff that Hulu just pumps out every fall, and yeah, little disappointing that like, I think the A24 brand is harmed by this movie in my mind. Like, I expect more from you guys. Come on, do better. Green light some truly transgressive and memorable things. It's like, this is truly only, I think, you're either preaching to the choir or you're inflaming the believers. And I just don't know, like, what would my dad get out of this? And, apart from him feeling like he was ripped off a little bit, I don't think there's much to it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Luca, he's going to push the printer off the table.
Oh boy.
Moving on to the mentionables. Why don't you take it away? This was a fun one. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, so my mentionable this week is, I kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole, that I'll occasionally see these like threads pop up online or some sort of link to this, but one of my favorite rabbit holes on the internet is looking at photos of legendary game development teams, video game development teams. And this particular one, this is I'll link this in our show description when this episode gets posted, so people know exactly what I'm talking about. But this was an Imgur link to probably about 50 photos of various legendary game development teams throughout the years, from the team that made Half-Life to the team that made Doom to the team that made more recent games like Divinity Original Sin or Wolfenstein, the more recent Wolfenstein games. And so I love looking at these. It's really fun to see the sort of evolution of these photos where, it used to be like 7 or 8 like nerdy mid 30-year-old dudes who are in like a dingy office with fluorescent lighting overhead, and then it's evolved to giant like 80 person, 100 person strong development teams who are literally taking a photo with like a drone in front of their like giant ass campus. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, look at our campus like building behind us. And so it's just really fun to see the evolution of this. And it's a fun little rabbit hole,
Especially when you see the journey of Blizzard, because you like that's where you really see that trajectory. But then like they used to have so much fun. Like look at those guys with their shoes off and suits next to a pool. Like, but then okay, yeah, Gaben. I just love the orange box launch parties. Like what a shit lord. Now he has a fleet of yachts. But this is where it started. And like the stuff from the 80s with like was it the guy that did Fable? Yeah, right there. Yeah, that guy. I can't think of his name right now. Or no, Peter Molyneux. That's who that is.
Yeah, Peter Molyneux.
Yeah, look at that. He's got the Canadian tuxedo on.
Yeah.
It was just a nice little blast from the past. Yeah, like the Westwood Studios team. Those guys, they gave me a lot of entertainment with Command and Conquer back in the day. Yeah, and just look at them. Like they're all
very British.
Very British. They're also like this is like sitting on the floor of an office with like nothing in it, and now we're at giant conventions with like look at that. Like I left it off because I wasn't sure if YouTube would like it, but there was a photo of the Warhorse team for Kingdom Come Deliverance, where this guy's
the guy in the Borat
Speedo and the Mankini. Yeah, no, that's a lot of fun, and that whole album is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And just, I guess, speaking of video games, I have another update for you about Rogue Trader, because holy shit, like I underestimated how much content is in this game. Like getting through the first chapter, I'm like, okay, I have a good sense of what this game is about. It's going to be cool. Oh, guess what? You have no idea, for like the first like 10 hours you play this thing, that there's this whole other aspect to the game where it's like Mass Effect space exploration and scanning planets. And if you go to a planet, more than likely there's something to land on and do, unlike most games. And not only that, you're like managing colonies and like orchestrating trade agreements. So like there's this whole colony simulation aspect to it. And I just can't gush more about this experience. It has so much going on. I like in Act 3 you get completely derailed and like pulled out of that experience after you've just spent like 20 hours doing it, and then suddenly you're just in this discrete segments of the game where you're in Komora, where the Drukhari, like the dark elf equivalent, have like their torture kingdom, and you're forced to do all these gladiator fights, and then there's a whole other section of the game after that. It just, every like time you think you've done like a crap ton and you've exhausted all there is for you to do, this game is like, oh, by the way, we're just going to open up like this whole galaxy even more. Have fun, like just good luck, doing everything there is to do. because I've read that there's like 250 hours worth of like actual gameplay content in this. And like if this had the veneer of Baldur's Gate 3 and it had like the mocap acting and they put all that effort into it, it would not be nearly as big. You know, like they would not be able to pull off what they do. It kind of has to have that downgraded, you know, like animation, and like they don't have voice acting for everything. But yeah, if you ever find yourself like looking for something and it's on sale and it's, you know, and it's Rogue Trader, Owlcat really fucking killed it. I just recruited that Space Marine, and
Okay, nice.
and what I appreciate about him is that he's actually like to scale. So instead of just taking up a single cell of the battlefield, he takes up like 4, and he's like literally like you can use him as cover, like he's like a walking tank. But he's also, but like he has kind of a cheat code because he can't die. He can't die in a fight. So if he ever gets down to 0 health, he just takes a nap and then he wakes back up and can fight again. So it's almost like, yeah, why wouldn't I take him along for everything that I do? But yeah, because I've been playing this game for so long and I've been waiting for things like the Necrons to show up. I've been waiting for like the Gene Stealers with the Tyranids to materialize, and all that shit's starting to happen. And that's really why I love it, because it gives, like, I think for my money, the best Warhammer video game experience. Like, this is what's been missing from that. If you're not into RTSs and shooters, like this is a quality CRPG experience. And
So
yeah.
let me ask you this, with your update here, now that you're so much further into it, I'm kind of curious as to how the game fares as far as like bugs and like glitches and stuff, because one of the things that I think Owlcat is known for is like they have so much ambition that in their previous games, once you get like further and further into the game, their like systems like collapse in on each other, and like you get all of these like completely, you know, crazy bugs and glitches because there are just like variables that they never thought of, like completely unique to like certain players, because they just have so many systems on top of systems on top of systems. So like how does the game fare as far as like bugs and stuff?
I actually only ran into like my first bug experience last night. And it was when like God, what are they called again? I literally name dropped them. The robot people, the Necrons. They have these like scarab beetles that can heal themselves. So like they're fucking tough to fight because you'll do a boatload of damage and then they'll just get fixed right away. So you want to target those things. And during one of my my turns, I like chunked down a Necron, and then because I had this particular character has like the ability to, like, if you try and move away from me and you're close enough, I'll just get a free hit on you. And because I did that, a scarab beetle was like tracked on trying to heal that guy, and because it couldn't do that, it just kept on going back and forth between one cell and another for like a good 15 seconds. And I'm like, did this game just break on me? And then it just course corrected and fixed itself, thankfully. But as far as its systems, you know, everything's pretty solid, you know, like thus far. Because like I'm like level 48, you know, with all of the characters at this point, and they can all do so many wacky things. And you know, and it's like, if you're in the midst of a fight and you have all your disparate characters deploying all of their abilities, and there's like all these like stat modifiers going on, and the game just runs really, really well, even when there's a lot happening. And so I guess they figured their shit out, or like they worked out the kinks during the open beta, because I've just had nothing but good experiences with it. And you know, if I, you know, after I finish this playthrough, I'm probably gonna buy the DLC, because you get like a a heretic, like chaos aligned character, and I'm gonna go a full heretic run because I'm going iconoclast, middle of the road, and it makes everybody upset with me, because like yeah, like all the dogmatic, like Imperium people are like, bro, you're breaking so many laws. Why do you have all these weird Xenos, hanging out with you? Like this is not good. And then all the Xenos are like, bro, we can't trust you. You're like, you've killed so many of us. And I'm like, but you all deserve it. But that's the level of freedom, as far as, choice goes. And it just, there's all these different, like ways of solving problems. Like either like, yeah, sometimes it devolves to a fight, but like if you jump between one star system and another, and it's like, and the route isn't like, like well defined through the warp, like wacky shit can happen. Like sometimes you'll like a group of like people will just appear on your flight deck and they'll be like, no, don't leave us. And then you'll come out of it and it's like, oh, that was weird. And then other times you have, chaos in, incursions on your ship that you have to clean up, or like there's a giant space mirror that you bring to your ship that makes people disappear. And it's like, well, how do you solve that problem? If everyone you send to destroy it disappears into like the thin air, and your only option is to like literally blow a hole in the side of your ship so it gets sucked out into space and you can just move on. Like there's a lot going on here, and can't recommend it enough. Definitely want to try
it out. Yeah, sounds awesome.
But what you should maybe take a moment to think about is going to a theater to see Heretic. We recommend you wait for streaming. It's that kind of a cozy, throw it on, and don't think too hard kind of a movie, even though it's inviting you to think very deeply about things to a degree. But you might find yourself just in the shallows. It's not going to take you into deep water like other quality A24 films, that we all, have supported over the years. And this movie's getting some undue, promotional help with because of the association. I take issue. I really don't think it sullies the good works of The Witch and The Lighthouse and everything in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that kind of does it for us this week. We're going to be getting my minisode belatedly, but you'll get it. And you can think about our political system a little bit and how it could be better, because North Dakota did it better 100 years ago. And now we're in a cesspool. We had 3 parties in this state, and now we have 1. But and then Matt will have a minisode as well coming up on November 18th about video games that would actually make good TV. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say there, because that's always fertile ground for thought and consideration. Mm-hmm. And our Thanksgiving episode, did we decided what that was going to be at the beginning?
Well,
we did.
Yeah,
we did. Yeah.
The week of Thanksgiving, we're going to do Gladiator 2.
A movie that I almost wish they had done the one where Russell Crowe is reincarnated throughout all the wars in history. That would have been amazing. But it sounds absurd and terrible. But we'll see what Ridley Scott has to say. He apparently has another Alien movie that he's going to shoehorn in. So we might finally get the conclusion to the David trilogy. But I just don't know. I don't know, Uncle Ridley. I just don't know if I can trust you again completely. But we will go see Gladiator 2. And with Denzel. That should be fun. Thank you all for watching, and have a good week.
Yep. See ya.